we're going to get started. Let's see. Let's do what we always do. Let's go around the horn and introduce ourselves, and then we'll get to the agenda. Want to start?
Jen Sederola, GSO President.
Christopher Hahn.
Father Alexander Carlucci.
Anna Benedict.
Sam Stanley from Stony Brook University.
Kevin Law, the chair of the council.
Good morning, I'm Jim Morgul.
Wow.
Start down there and move up.
Nicholas Scabetta.
Hey, Nick.
Elaine Crossan.
Alan Ingalls, Stoller Center.
Nancy Franklin, Department of Psychology.
Peter Bajan.
Maddie Orlich.
Marjorie Leonard. Marissa Trachtenberg.
Matthew Moore. Mark Maculitis.
Susan Hines.
Sean Hilbrun. Joe Warning. Steve Peichel, head men's basketball coach.
Director Griffin.
Dennis Sasanis.
Ken Krashansky, Health Sciences.
Ruben Pasternak, Stony Brook Hospital.
Fred Scangle, Long Island State Veterans Home.
Dexter Bailey, advancement.
Matt Whalen, Strategic Initiatives.
David Conover, Vice President for Research. Lyle Holmes, Finance.
Paul Camp Police, Information Technology.
Susan Blum, Legal.
Judy Griman, Chief Deputy.
And I'll remind everybody, we're being webcasted, folks, we thank them from our IT department. Well, I'm going to recognize the quorum, and thank you for all our guests and for Sam's leadership team for being here with us today. Let's rise and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Jim Morgan will start us.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We've got some interesting things on the agenda today. I have a very brief chairman's report. 2 items. One, something you may have been reading about, just share with you, including, I think, again, opportunities for Stony Brook. Last week, we had the Lieutenant Governor down Long Island, and we kicked off round 5 of the Regional Economic Development Council. That's Sam and I, and now Jim. We just got Jim on that council as well. Serve on, and Stony Brook has done very well in rounds 1 through 4, and we're hoping to get some neat projects from Stony Brook again for round 5, and excited about that. And there was also a significant amount of money put in the state budget. That was a result of a combination of things, including financial settlements for foreign lending institutions, among other things. And most of the money is going to be used for infrastructure. And one of the things that we're working on is we're being clever and creative with the word infrastructure. And so in addition to the traditional infrastructure like bricks and mortar, we've coined the term intellectual infrastructure, and encouraging some of our great research institutions, including Stony Brook, to be eligible for some of that funding. So we're excited about both of those opportunities. I'll be working with Sam and others on that, and hopefully later on this year we'll hear some good news on both counts, the REDC process as well as the state pot of funds for infrastructure. So I wanted to share that with you. And then the only other item I have on my agenda is one of the fun things I get to do as chair. We have a very special guest with us today, Jamil Warning, from the great SBU Division I basketball team. And he's here with Coach Steve Peichel and our great new athletic director, Sean. I think back, and Jim will be able to relate to this, being a diehard Red Sox fan my entire life, and I suffered through 35 years of, always coming close but never giving up. And it really made me, I feel, and Jim and I shared this, who I was in terms of a man. And,
A masochist.
But always, being optimistic for next year. And we always had either a great coach that kept us in the game or some great players that kept us in love with the team or the sport. And I look at the year that Stony Brook's had in so many different ways, whether the women, just coming so close yesterday with lacrosse, against Princeton, or the women's softball over the weekend against, Binghamton, and then our friends from Albany who sort of we came close to in basketball this year. But, that's now behind us, and it was exciting, and all the teams did great. We should feel proud about what Stony Brook Athletics is doing for not just the students on the campus, for the brand of the institution, and for the fundraising, and the alumni, and the media it's generating. But the thing I just referenced before, we have one of the best coaches in the NCAA with Coach Peichel, and we have the best player in the NCAA in Jamil Warney. He led the entire nation, whether it's Duke, Kentucky, Louisville, Oregon, you name it. He led in double-doubles, more double-doubles in terms of points. And we just wanted to recognize Jamil and thank him for everything he's doing for Stony Brook and coming back for his senior year in September. It's of one and done, where kids go, join college, and they're really just joining to get some FaceTime and some publicity, and then move on. Jamil's coming back for his senior year, and I know we're going to all be cheering you on. I was telling Jamil before, my 13-year-old is like his #1 fan, loves coming to the games, and so exciting. And you're doing that. You're building up this new generation of people who love Stony Brook, and that's great for all of us. So, Jamil, we'd like to have you stand and thank you and present you with this Outstanding Achievement Award. And again, we really congratulate you and wish you the best. Sean, you want to get in here?
I'm really trying to stand on my tiptoes.
Sam, it ain't working.
Let me have distance reasons.
Okay.
We're honored to be here today. I just want to share a quick story. First of all, he's a 3.0 student. His senior year of high school had scholarship offers to every major college in Iowa, Temple, USC, the schools, and he picked Stony Brook because of the people. And I'm just honored 4 years to get to coach a young man who does everything right, in and out of the classroom, on the court, and couldn't be more honored to be the head basketball coach here at this great university. And I tell you what, we're going places. He's going to get us to our first NCAA tournament. I promise you that. He's working hard to have that happen, and he's working hard to be the first player ever drafted in the NBA draft too. So he's going to have a great year. Next year we'll be back, and you'll be presenting him with another award. So I'm very confident of that. But thank you for having us today. We have to run because he has class. He's got to go to that because his #1 goal is to graduate. So we're real proud of that. Thank you for having us.
Excuse me? Look forward to it.
Congratulations.
Nice job.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Sam for the President's Report. Jamil, thanks again. Best of luck to you.
Good luck. So that's a fantastic young man and a fantastic program. Just to start with that, 5 of the last 6 seasons have been 21 seasons, which is a remarkable accomplishment for any NCAA Division I basketball team. So Kevin said it far better than I could, but this is an outstanding program, and we're really fortunate to have one of this quality at Stony Brook. And essentially 100% graduation rates for the students. So that's something Steve didn't talk about, but that's something we're very proud of. So these are athletes who come to Stony Brook and end up essentially finishing with a degree from Stony Brook University. So that's, again, a great accomplishment. So you have my report in front of you, and I'll go through a few highlights very quickly. The first thing is that we had some good news on March 18th after a tremendous amount of work done by Ken Kashansky and his team. We put forward a proposal to SUNY, and Dennis Asanis, the provost, helped with the submission of this as well, to establish a doctorate of pharmacy degree and therefore to create a Stony Brook University School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. And that resolution was approved by the SUNY Board of Trustees. It requires approval now by the New York State Board of Regents. We will need accreditation from the body that accredits schools of pharmacy, and we'll be doing that as well. But it's incredibly exciting to add a new school, essentially, to the already outstanding schools in the health sciences, and something we're very excited about. And we had great support from the City Board of Trustees, and we look forward to moving that ahead. Ken, anything you want to add?
No, it's a great challenge. It's a great opportunity. The interdigitation of a new school of pharmacy with West Campus, with East Campus schools, it's just a tremendous opportunity for Stony Brook. And now we just have to get it accomplished, recruit a new dean, recruit new faculty members, find space for the school. But other than those things, we're in great shape.
The timeline, Ken?
We hope to admit our first class in the fall of 2017. We had thought we might be able to do it 2016, but the weather, all of us noticed we didn't have the best of winters, delayed the opening of the Mart building, which is where the classroom space becomes available. So we believe it's going to be fall of 2017.
I know the St. John's School is very popular and gets a lot of Long Island kids.
Yeah, it does. It's got about 400 students get admitted to the St. John's School of Pharmacy with a tuition about $15,000 a year higher than what we're planning to charge. We're going to admit a class of 75, and the goals, and I've shared with this body what the goals of our school are. They're somewhat different than what the goals of the St. John's School of Pharmacy are. And our goal is to create very high-level pharmacists who can practice at the top of their license, population pharmacy, academic pharmacy, and hospital pharmacy. So much smaller class. We're going to draw from Stony Brook University, I suspect. We've already started a pharmacy club, a pre-pharmacy club, on the main Stony Brook campus, so we're very excited about the possibilities.
And different emphasis, yeah.
Different emphasis.
Shane, does council have to take any action on creating the new program, pharmacy?
Susan, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So next thing is on February 6th, we had the dedication ceremony for the new NSLS-2, the world's brightest synchrotron light source at Brookhaven National Laboratory. As everyone knows, we manage Brookhaven National Laboratory in conjunction with Patel Memorial Corporation. Stony Brook University does. It's a tremendous honor and a privilege to manage that, and we recompeted and won the opportunity to continue that for another 5 years and potentially 20, which was exciting. And this is a key part. So there are two major user facilities at Brookhaven. One is the National Light Source Synchrotron 2. The other is the Relativistic Heavy Ion Collider, or the RIC. These are major user facilities that draw scientists from around the world to come to Brookhaven and to interact with Stony Brook graduate students, occasionally undergraduate students and faculty who have appointments there. And this is a $912 million project, so nearly $1 billion, which came in under budget and earlier than expected, in part because of ERA support. And it was a great day. So we had the Secretary of Energy there, we had Senator Schumer there, Congressman Zeldin was there, Congresswoman Rice was there, and overall a great opportunity to showcase to these leaders the amazing scientific facilities at Brookhaven National Laboratory. And we continue to be very excited about the future. One of our goals strategically has been to hire, in conjunction with Brookhaven, great new scientists to come into this region to take advantage of these extraordinary facilities. And I think under Dennis's leadership as provost, we've done a very good job of expanding our relationships with the laboratory, hiring more joint faculty, developing more programs together. I think all of which is going to serve us really well in the future. So that was really a great event. We have a significant new grant that came in. Everybody's interested in economic development, and we have this great new grant that came in. It's a $3 million grant to establish the Long Island Bioscience Hub. This is part of a new program from NIH, the Research Evaluation and Commercialization Program called REACH. And we were one of only 3 awarded nationwide. Stony Brook University was one of 3 to receive this award. This is a collaborative project with us, with Cold Spring Harbor, with Brookhaven National Laboratory. But the idea is to really develop programs to create this ecosystem where we really can push economic development on the island. So this $3 million, new money coming in. We're going to provide money from the university, matching dollars as well to help with this. But again, the idea is to really push the ecosystem for economic development on the island, to really help us translate all the discoveries that are going on into products that will improve people's lives and help push science forward as well. So we're very excited about that. Elaine will talk about the state budget. I'll talk about another way in which we get money for the university, which is fundraising. Sometimes seems more reliable, but not. I'm joking. We raised $2.3 million to support student financial aid at the 16th Annual Stars of Stony Brook Gala at Chelsea Piers in Manhattan. The foundation, we honored Jane Fonda. It was a really great event. She's been a strong supporter of our Center for Studies of Men and Masculinities. This is a center which really pushes to engage men in helping women move forward in issues around gender equity. So they do some great work and some great science there. And it also marked the 50th anniversary of the Stony Brook Foundation. And during its lifetime, the Stony Brook Foundation has raised more than $800 million essentially for Stony Brook University, which is an incredible figure.
Dexter, do you do all of it? Dexter, you did all of it?
About 2/3.
Yeah.
That's about half.
That's greatness, I think. About half.
Awesome.
So, but it's been remarkable. And in here is a list of some of the other people who given very generously to Stony Brook. And remember that the $2.3 million, again, supports primarily scholarships for students, so it's a great cause. And we had some of the student recipients there, and they always make a very eloquent case just by being there for how important this work is and how important the fundraising is to support them. One of the things we care a lot about is being green and at the university, and we have had a score on the Princeton Review Guide of 99 out of 99 is the highest score you can get for how green we are on campus. It's the highest score possible. And so we were ranked as the number 4 in the country most environmentally responsible green college by the Princeton Review. So my kudos to the people who helped make that happen, driven by our students, our faculty, and our staff. We're really committed to keeping this as an environmentally friendly campus as possible. I wanted to introduce, she introduced herself very briefly as she went around, but I want to introduce my new chief deputy. She doesn't start till July 1, but she's been coming out early just because she really enjoys it here at Stony Brook. As everyone knows, this is a position that's very important, manages high-level relationships with both internal and external constituents. And Judy Greiman comes to us from the Connecticut Conference of Independent Colleges, CCIC, where she has been the president. She's been doing that since 1998, actually, and has a number of responsibilities there, many of which tie in very well with the responsibilities here. She received her BA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and her JD from DePaul University College of Law. Please join me in welcoming Judy. I'm almost done.
Take your time.
Yeah, okay. No, I wanted to recognize one of our own. Ed Feldman, who received the Chew University Faculty Senate Outstanding Achievement Award. Ed, congratulations. Given, as you know, Ed serves currently as president of our University Senate. He's also been very active senator in the statewide university faculty, serving in many leadership roles, and continues on the executive committee of the SUNY-wide Senate as immediate past vice president and secretary. And he's very much engaged in shared governance and really trying to improve not only our university, but others. So Ed, congratulations on that great award. So commencement, always probably the most exciting time of the year. We will celebrate our 55th commencement ceremony on Friday, May 22nd at 11 a.m. Members of the council and everyone else is invited to come. We have 3 honorary degree recipients who were approved by the SUNY Board of Trustees. Billy Joel, receiving a Doctor of Music, it's alphabetical here. Ben Schneiderman, Doctor of Science, and Charles Wong, Doctor of Humane Letters. And all three will don their academic regalia, along with nearly 6,000 students, as they join in the university ceremonies, which will be held in Laval Stadium. And both Mr. Joel and Mr. Wong will speak at the May 22nd commencement ceremony. Professor Schneiderman will speak at the prestigious doctoral hooding ceremony on May 21st. So it should be exciting. Senator Schumer may join us as well. So it's always a fun day on commencement, but everyone's invited, and keep your fingers crossed that the weather will be good. We had one of the things that we pushed very hard for since I arrived is to create more endowed professorships. We've gone from 6 to 42 or 7 to 42. I think 6 to 42 since I've been here, which is something I'm really proud of. We had another investiture ceremony. So Carl Safina, who many of you may know, is the blue oceans expert, is one of the leaders in the world of conservation, and he was installed as endowed as actually for a professorship named after him, the Carl Safina Endowed Research Chair for Nature and Humanity. So he will be the first holder of that chair, and that was very exciting. And my congratulations to the School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences and Dennis for that investiture.
Sam,
ceremony.
to create an endowed chair, does it require a certain threshold of a gift? And is this all a part of the SUNY 2020 increase in professors, or is it part of?
No, I mean, this is really where, obviously SUNY 2020 has helped us provide state lines to help support this. So absolutely, in terms of having some state support for salary. But the endowment adds on essentially to the support and makes it much more attractive in our ability to attract great people essentially to come. Dex, you want to talk about kind of the cost for endowed?
Yeah, so for an endowed chair, the minimum is 1.5 million. And for a professorship, it's 750,000. So there are different levels that you can support. And then you also work with the department. Some are actually larger endowments because the department needed more funding to make everything happen.
So people either bequeath this or make a donation, outright donation,
Yes.
and sometimes they ask for a specific chair to be created, or you guys may help them figure out where there might be a need.
Exactly.
And you do both.
Yeah. And then obviously we wouldn't do the installation or award it until the funding is paid.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Great job.
So I'm going to wrap up very quickly with sports. It was a tough weekend. I hope everybody enjoyed Mother's Day. It was a little tough for Stony Brook sports. Our women's lacrosse team, which had an absolutely spectacular season under Coach Stelina, was ranked 6th in the nation and received a bye in the first round of the tournament. Unfortunately, ran into a Princeton team that played a great game and lost this Sunday at Stony Brook. Very disappointing. The good news is essentially everybody's back on that team with just a couple of exceptions. And I know Coach Stelina, if you read his comments in Newsday, he was very disappointed, but he's someone who I think this will drive them even harder. And I expect great things from that team, just like men's basketball. And then our softball team had a tough loss too after having had one of their best seasons ever. Yeah, unfortunately, this is one of these tournaments where you play, for the finals you play best 2 out of 3. And after having been the top seed and hosting at home and so on, they lost 2 straight in the finals. And so unfortunately they won't be going to the tournament, which is disappointing. But again, they had a fantastic season. So that's all I have to report. Again, great seasons for those teams, and again, great performances off the field as well in terms of GPAs for folks. But tough losses there. Yeah. So I think I'll stop there and I'll take any questions.
Thanks, Sam, for the report. Any questions for Sam?
So Dan, I'd like to just do something quickly here, and I think I've introduced before Nicholas Chabetta, right? Nicholas, you've been introduced to the Treasurer Council before, who is serves in the newly created position of Vice President for Communications and Marketing and Chief Communications Officer of the university. And he'd like to show you a couple of videos that we thought you might find interesting.
Sure.
3,
Thanks,
I think, in
Sam.
total. So Nicholas?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to show you three videos here. Quickly, the first 2 are representative of Stony Brook Medicine's next phase in their advertising campaign, which will run between April and June. It includes 4 new TV spots featuring heart cancer and imaging services. I'll show you 2 spots here for the sake of time. One, cancer and heart, and they really at the core are focused on patient testimonials, and that's what you'll see here. And we're threading that through, and that's been successful in the earlier phase of this campaign. And you'll see that as we pull it through this next phase here. The campaign's going to be running integrated, so it'll be on all platforms. It'll be TV, radio, print, and on the web. And one of the things as we look at the return on investment, which we will measure against consumer preference and then also consumer perception. And one thing, the study came back earlier this year, and there is a definitive link and a strong correlation between those who saw the Stony Brook medicine campaign and hospital preference for Stony Brook. So we're going to continue to build on that and what's been successful. So I'll show you the first spot.
I am the main caregiver for my mom and my uncle. I was not feeling well for a while. They found that I had a tumor and they said I had cancer. It was very frightening. Dr. Ryu explained what was going to happen when I got the radiation treatment and put me at ease. I'm here today for my family because of my faith and because of Stony Brook.
And the next one will be one of the leading spots for heart.
I was short of breath. I had a heart attack prior to that.
Dr. Taylor felt that Howard should not be subjected to opening his chest again. They felt he should have the TAVR.
It was very successful, thank God. My breath came back. I was like a new person. It's a wonderful place and they do wonderful things for you.
Ditto for me.
And then the next video I'll show you, Sam talked about it. We had the 16th annual Stars of Stony Brook Gala. And this video we produced at Stony Brook to show not only our past year accomplishments, but all the people that make it possible. So if we can go to that one.
Research, education, discovery. At Stony Brook University, we excel in these core missions. We're among the top 1% of universities in the world. Stony Brook has a long history of imaging innovation, including the technology for the MRI. Our faculty's research has led to pioneering breakthroughs, including discovering the cause of Lyme disease. And our students, the leaders of tomorrow, have received Fulbright, Gates Cambridge, and Goldwater scholarships. At Stony Brook, our past successes have brought us to where we are today, ready for the future.
We look out and see the world. It takes everything we have to face it. Without a sound, we take a step. Inside our hearts are racing. If it takes forever, we'll get there together. I'm winding along this road, not knowing where it will go. No matter what life brings, if it's you and me, Sometimes I know we're gonna fall down. Hold my hand and we'll get up. I know we're gonna make it somehow. If it takes forever, we'll get there together. I'm winding along this road, not knowing where it will go. No matter what life brings, if it's you and me, we're ready for anything. Watching the clouds go by and out and I learn to fly. No matter what life brings, if it's you and me, we're ready for anything. We look out and see the world. It takes everything we have to face it. Without a sound, we take a step. Inside our hearts are racing. If it takes forever, we'll get there together. I'm winding along this road, not knowing where it will go. No matter what life brings, if it's you and me, we're ready for anything. Watching the clouds go by and out and I learn to fly. No matter what life brings, if it's you and me, we're ready for anything. We're ready for anything. We're ready for anything. We're ready for anything. So as we run into the sun, sometimes I know we're gonna fall down. Hold my hand and we'll get up. I know we're gonna make it somehow. If it takes forever, we'll get there together. I'm winding along this road, not knowing where it will go. No matter what life brings, if it's you and me, we're ready for anything. Watching the clouds go by and out and I learn to fly. No matter what life brings, if it's you and me, we're ready for anything. We're ready for anything. We're ready for anything. We're ready for anything.
At Stony Brook University, we ensure that our students are ready for anything. Ready for new horizons, ready to take chances, to reach further, to delve deeper, to stretch higher. We're ready for whatever's next, because together, we are ready for the future.
It makes you feel proud to be, part of this great institution. Nice job, Stan. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Let the record reflect, 3 council members joined us, Ed Feldman, Reverend Michael Smith, and Linda Arman. And I waited to approve the minutes until Linda got here so she could make the motion to approve, seconded by Chris. Any comments, revisions, additions to the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Going back to the agenda, we're going to hear from Elaine Crossan, the Vice President for Government Community Relations, on the 2015-16 State Executive Budget.
Good morning. So not much is going on in Albany. It's been really quiet. But seriously, it is very difficult to get, substantive work done in this environment, but we are slogging through it and doing our best. So what I'm going to present is a summary of the enacted budget that was passed and signed into law in April. So I apologize, this is smaller than I thought it would be when I put it up. But I'm going to run through the operating budget and I'm going to compare it with last year's final enacted budget. There's new money in the SUNY Investment Fund, it's called, and Performance Fund. Is $18 million available system-wide to each campus. Two campuses system-wide upon the completion of putting together a performance improvement plan. The Board of Trustees will oversee this and approve, grants to each campus based upon their metrics on improving access, completion, research, and community engagement. So the SUNY Board of Trustees recently passed a resolution adopting this, and I believe grants will be due in the next couple of months. Grant applications will be due in the next couple of months. As most of you know, we get direct state support for the Stony Brook Hospital, as do the other two SUNY hospitals. That support last time was $87.5 million. It went up a smidge to $87.6 million. Some of this was put in by the governor. The rest was added by the legislature. The next line talks about salary funding. As many of you recall, despite having a maintenance of effort provision where the legislature and the governor agreed not to cut our budgets below a certain threshold, it does not account for salary increases that are negotiated and agreed upon with the unions. So we are asked to pick up that out of our operating budget, each campus, and the legislature each year since this has happened has saw fit to add some money system-wide. It's not much. Last time it was $7.6 million. This time around it was even less, $4.7 million. That's system-wide. It's a drop in the bucket given the expense associated with those salary increases, which for us is, Mark?
Over $8 million.
Over $8 million a year. The next line talks about the state appropriation level for the Long Island State Veterans Home. That went up about $1.5 million. And that is to allow Fred to spend his own money. Right. That is not state money. That's just the authority to access it through the state budget process. We have here at Stony Brook 2 centers of excellence, one in wireless technology, the other in advanced energy. They get their operating support from the state, and that went up, as you see, from about $872,000 to $1 million each. So we worked hard with the other centers of excellence to get that funding increase. Same for our CATs, also get operating support from the state, and that went up as well system-wide. Stony Brook will get a bump up in its fair share of that as well. There was discussion about increasing the TAP award. That did not go through. That stayed the same. Our Marine and Animal Disease Lab, through Strategic Initiative Really funding, gets operating support directly from the state. That stayed the same. We always have to ask the legislature to add that. That is not part of the governor's executive budget. You'll see there was a slight increase system-wide for Educational Opportunity Program. We worked with our EOP folks to get that amount increased in the budget as well. So now I'm going to turn to the capital budget, and this is where we had some disheartening news. In the critical maintenance area, last year you will see in the final enacted budget there was over $400 million system-wide for critical maintenance, and that is really maintaining and repairing our campus. Last year, our share of that was almost $65 million, plus another $19 million that we are being repaid. So we had a fair amount of money, still below what we used to get. Normally we would get about 70 to 75 million. It was still a little below that last year, but this year the legislature and the governor only put in about $200 million system-wide. It's about half of what we had last year system-wide. Stony Brook's share is about $22.2 million. And again, the final installment of that $19 million, which again is paying us back in some respects. So this is a real problem for the university. We have at least $75 million worth of need, maybe more, right, Matt? This is really an issue that we have to focus on with SUNY Central. This is a system-wide problem. How can we get more critical maintenance money for the system, and particularly for those campuses that need it?
Do you mean trying to get more from the state, or trying to get more out of the SUNY system allotment?
Good question. I think we need to really do both. We have to try both avenues.
Well, one would be this year, I guess, with the SUNY system, and the other would be next year in the state budget process?
Correct. So I think part of what's going on here is that the division of the budget looks at the cash available system-wide and sees a lot of unspent cash in the system because of some campuses don't spend their critical maintenance money. And so I think that's where they are reluctant to add more, and then it gets more difficult as the process goes forward with the legislature. These are not sexy projects. This is fixing pipes and repaving walkways and so forth. So I think, you're exactly right. It's twofold. We have to see if we can work within SUNY to see if there can be some reallocation from the schools that don't necessarily need their critical maintenance money right away to the campuses that do, and then to go back and have more discussions with the division of the budget so they can understand where there is pressing need for critical maintenance money, and to let that money be put into the budget so we don't always have to borrow from our sister campuses.
Thanks.
And also, as Kevin mentioned, there was a lot of capital money available, one-time money. There was $6 billion to spend on capital. For Long Island, there was $150 million set aside just for Long Island. We advocated that part of that should come to Stony Brook, Cold Spring Harbor, and Brookhaven Lab. As Kevin indicated, there'll be a process for applying for that money, and we'll be first in line. There's also another $400 million that's designated really for downstate in terms of capital money. And again, there'll be a process for applying for that money. So for Long Island, really, there's a shot at $550 million in capital funding. There was some money set aside for a wastewater treatment study. It had some interesting language that set aside $3 million to Suffolk County if they could come up with 50% match. If they can't come up with a 50% match, the $3 million comes to Stony Brook. We're actually meeting with the county to discuss how that's all going to work in about an hour. So SUNY 2020 round 4 of capital funding. I'm sorry, that should be round 5. We just applied for round 4. So this is every year since 2011, the state has put in capital money for the SUNY campuses to compete. This it uses the same criteria as in last year's budget. So there's $55 million system-wide. You have to apply, and you have to demonstrate a project that includes an expansion of online learning, assists in the Startup New York program, or enhances experience-based learning. So as I said, we just put in an application for round 4 of that. And this continues that in the next year's budget cycle with round 5. As Kevin alluded to, there's $750 million statewide for the Regional Economic Development Councils. This is just to go over some reappropriations. Every year, if you haven't spent your capital money from the year prior, and even sometimes many years prior, you need to get authority to spend it in the upcoming fiscal year. So they reappropriate the money. We have quite a few of these over the years. We made sure that the $60 million for the mezzanine building was reappropriated so that we could spend that money as we move forward with the design and construction of that building. Some of you may have read that there was a veto of an attempt to repurpose some of the money in this list to our stadium expansion. We are in talks with Senate Finance and the Division of the Budget to see how we can spend that money, since the governor did not want it spent apparently on the stadium. So there are some other things in the budget that are of interest to Stony Brook. The governor's Get On Your Feet loan forgiveness program was approved by the legislature. This allows certain students to have 2 years of their loan obligations forgiven if they're earning less than $50,000 a year after they graduate. There's a new scholarship of $500 a year for 4 to 5 years for students who meet certain award criteria. This was designed to build on top of TAP, but it is also merit-based. There's a standardized financial aid award letter. It just takes the SUNY letter and makes it mandatory for all schools within New York State, not just SUNYs. There's the SUNY Board of Trustees recently acted on this. They passed a resolution urging all campuses to develop a plan to offer more experience-based learning opportunities on their campuses. The governor's budgets had tried to make this mandatory as a condition of graduation. The legislature thought that was too stringent, so they made it that each campus had to come up with a plan. There were 2 items that didn't make it into the budget process. One was passage of the DREAM Act, so that will be taken up post-budget perhaps. And the other was an extension of SUNY 2020, which expires next year. So it's we do have another year to work on it if we are not successful this session. And given the climate, I'm not sure much work is going to get done between now and the end of session in June, but we will be working on this every day. This is our #1 priority, to make sure that we get that law extended. And that is my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Elaine. If SUNY 2020 does not get extended, so we go back to a flat, tuition, and then some years it could go up, and some years it could stay flat again?
Correct.
We go back to that old model, which really didn't do many people good.
Right, and there are some other implications as well. The maintenance of effort language that protects a base level of operating funding from the state would expire. There's also a scholarship program, a student aid language that's mandatory that was intended to cushion the students against paying the full tuition increase. That will lapse as well. So it may be actually cause some hardship for some of our students because that would not be mandatory. You know, it would be permissive but not mandatory. So there are some real downsides in addition to not being able to have our tuition revenue grow.
And then continue to be able to hire more professors.
Correct.
Better student services, utilizing support. You know, one of the things that's remarkable, something we see at Stony Brook campus and is taking place at every other campus across the country, is more and more students are seeking out psychiatric, psychological services, counseling. It's very important. I think part of it is just an attitudinal shift by young people, more willing to reach out and get help when they need it, which I think is a positive thing. But since 2005, we've grown about, if you look at cumulative visits, at, let's say this time of year, we've grown from about 860 to about 1,470. So it's gone up significantly in terms of the number of visits. And we're adding people, but there's significant cost associated with providing these kind of services, yet they're absolutely vital. So it's a big challenge, and I think, you know, we went into this budget period with, you know, with a limited number of hard goals that we wanted, and we didn't really, I think, do particularly well. So one was to, as Elaine talked about, to get critical maintenance restored and increased, and in fact, instead we got a terrible cut on the critical maintenance. She talked about how damaging that is to the university, and it's really just bad from any administrative standpoint that one can think of. For those of you who, you know, nonprofits or run a company, to fail to invest in your infrastructure and to allow it to deteriorate, there's really no ways to do things, because we end up spending much more of your tax dollars to remediate and fix things that are broken than we would if we'd done the maintenance necessary to begin with. So it's really just not a smart way to run things. And it's a slightly complicated issue, as Elaine said, because there are some institutions that haven't used their full allotment. But fundamentally, an institution like Stony Brook every year has been spending its full allotment of critical maintenance dollars. There's no dollars left in the budget at the end, and we have a number of critical projects that are going to have to be postponed or not done because of this. So that was problematic. Tied to that was the idea of getting another long-term capital plan, which has been incredibly important for SUNY and for Stony Brook University. The idea that one can have a 5 or 10-year capital plan, which really allows you to plan, which really allows you to build. There's been something introduced potentially to try and do that in the Senate, but whether or not that'll have widespread support or not, I don't know. But that was really something we wanted to look at. And then second, we were very interested, of course, in SUNY 2020, which did not work its way in the budget. And one of the things I've learned here is that these things take a while sometimes to get done. So as Elaine said, we're going to push really hard on the effort to get this done. It's been critical to really improving the university and turning it around. She mentioned the maintenance effort clause is really important. And we've allowed more economically, we've been able to help and provide scholarships for economically disadvantaged students, as well as some middle class students come to Stony Brook using the dollars that were generated by increased support from SUNY 2020. So it's been a great program for us. It also helped build the MART, the capital component of the first version of it helped us provide some support for the MART building. So it's been a great program. We really want to push to get it renewed. And it would be helpful to do it when it was not an election year, because it's harder to get these kind of bills passed, I think, in an election year. So there's still a lot at stake, and we will push very hard on that. And the third thing where we hope we were successful was getting capital money essentially to support the idea of this research triangle, to support really improving our efforts in high performance computing for the region, essentially. So collaboration between Brookhaven, Stony Brook, and Cold Spring Harbor, each of us doing something important, but our major contribution being in high performance computing at our R&D park. That remains to be seen from the process that Kevin talked about, but we think we have an outstanding proposal and one that would really benefit and help grow the economic development in the region. So that one, jury's out on how we do there, but I would have to say it was a disappointing budget from my perspective. It's not over yet, but disappointing so far.
Any questions for Elena, Sam?
I have one question. From the experiential learning requirement, if that was mandated, how much would it have cost us? Would we be ready for it? Would it have been a hardship on the university?
Short answer is a lot, and yes. I don't know the second question, but yeah, a lot maybe, and yes, it would have been a hardship. I think the challenge is that we do a lot of experiential learning, and part of it is how you define it. So you find research experience for students as part of that. I would say yes, but that could be up for discussion. But if you just defined it as purely internships, that would be an extraordinary demand. If you said that every student now before they graduate would have had to have an internship outside of the university, and you're talking about 16,000 students competing across this region to try and find internships. And again, how you would fill that demand, and how do you work with students, for example, who don't have cars? So if someone wants to do an internship and they don't have transportation to the internship, how do we handle that? Do we have to now provide transportation to and from places? So I think it's one of these things where people believe, and I think there's some data to say, that students who undergo an experiential learning process or event, activity, do better in terms of graduation rates than those who don't. So there's some reason to think that it helps students get more engaged with their learning and helps them succeed in the future. But to mandate it for all students would have been very, very problematic. So I appreciate the fact that the legislature was willing to change that. And again, it's the kind of thing, and I see Ed raising his hand.
You know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I do know what you're going to say. So is that faculty need to be in that discussion as well? And so because they have to help organize these things, they help to advise students on what the opportunities are, and of course they provide the internal undergraduate research experiences, which are so important, and which is something I participated in as an undergraduate student. My daughters participated in as undergraduate students in other institutions. These are really important, I think, in guiding people's research careers. So I think, again, I don't think anybody is opposed to experiential learning. It's just the implementation would have been very problematic, and I think you need a very broad definition, but then you still have a lot of logistical issues on how you would get this done.
Let me just add two lines to that, and Sam and I have worked close enough together that we now read each other's minds.
Yes, exactly.
But the concern for the University Senate Executive Committee met with Ken LaValle this past week, and this is one of the agenda items on our that we discussed with him, because our concern is the governor's role in setting curriculum. If this is a curricular issue, for better or for worse, this is a faculty responsibility in association with administration, and we were concerned that the governor, in an unprecedented way, was making academic decisions.
Thank you.
Thinking back 30 years ago, when I was an undergrad here, I did an internship with a guy who is now the Brookhaven Town Supervisor, Ed Roman.
And a great career was started.
Yes.
So you're a supporter.
I do, but you're right, we need the resources, and we need a lot of things to work out. So it was different back then. I think I got 3 credits for it. So it was good.
But no pay.
No pay. No pay.
And an A, though.
All right. Well, thank you, Elaine. Moving on to the agenda. We are going to get an update on the Stoller Center from Mr. Alan Ingalls. Alan.
Thank you, Kevin. Always a pleasure to follow budget reports. I have some of these to hand out. Don't be worried about the paper wasted. We have new ones being ordered with the shield on them. Most of the people around the outside probably know a bit, but I've got extras here if someone wants some of these. We have enough of those on the table? Anyone want some of these here? Some here? You might need one. I know you do. And I'll take some on this side. Come on, Matt, help me out. I need my chair. Can everyone see me okay here? Is that all right if I sit?
Yep. The board is going to fall
I took notes because I told I had about 10 minutes, and as Sam knows, I could probably use that just to say hello. So, welcome to the world of the Stoller Center. Thank you again, Kevin and Sam, for having me out here today. For those of you who don't know a lot about the Stoller Center, we really have 3 missions. It's really one mission with 3 parts. Part 1 is to present and produce the highest quality of cultural entertainment, music, theater, dance, fine art, popular programs, family programs, film and film media, such as the Met Opera broadcasts. To the greater community, our students, faculty, staff, and students, and our 5 theaters and 5,000 square foot art gallery. That's the only part of our operation that's actually income generating, except for a couple of rentals we do throughout the year, which we have very little room for these days. The second part is really to organize and present and manage the university arts programs that are within our building, music, theater, and art. We provide their front of house, their box office, their technical support. We bring in the money to our box office and then actually deposit in their accounts. So we're actually the management team for the arts departments that we house in our building. The third part is to provide the venues for the university for the numerous events such as graduations, opening week activities, lectures, convocations, graduations, benefits, different kinds of events, and when available, the few rentals we're able to do during the year, and those, of course, are income generating. We also provide the installations and curating for the art exhibits. These include the professional exhibits we produce and also the student exhibits, the MFA show, the senior show, and a biannual faculty show. So those are sort of the three elements that make up the center in one big fell swoop. And it's amazing how these three parts come together, and all of it in the course of a year provide about 325 annual events in the Stoller Center in our 5 theaters and our art gallery.
325?
325 events.
One every day of the year?
Well, you know, sometimes 4 in one day. And that includes the annual film festival. It includes the Met-Opera broadcast, the family programs, music department concerts and recitals, theater department plays, professional and student art exhibits, Stoller-run tours of the center and the art gallery, dozens of university-wide convocations, lectures and special events, orientations, graduations, student-sponsored concerts, shows and lectures, workshops, master classes, and internal outreach events annually in our 5 theaters and gallery. In addition to our professional staff, Stoller is run by over 100 Stony Brook University students at any given time, providing good paying jobs on campus and great hands-on experience in production, box office, front of house management, art gallery curating, and marketing and public relations. So we really provide a nice service, and we get some great work from our great students here at Stony Brook. Then there's about 30 or 40 programs here that we actually take out to the community, and we'll get back to that at the very end because I think that's probably the most important update I want to give today about what we're doing for the community and our own community, which is inside Stony Brook. So we bring in about 250,000 attendees for all of these programs and events annually. Obviously, some of these are recurrent visitors. Almost every student, faculty, and staff member attend at least one program a year at Stoller Center, and many have taken up occupancy by attending 4 to 5 in a current week. Our breakdown is about 60% community and 40% campus attendees with their guests, and that's about 10% students. Up from most universities, but not nearly what I want, not nearly what our staff wants, but it is climbing. Visitors come from all over Long Island, New York, across the country, and across the world, mainly for our International Film Festival in the summer. But the truth is probably 80% of our attendees come from the campus and a 30-mile radius around Suffolk County. A couple of other interesting facts include 60% of what we present at Stoller Center is non-income generating. And that refers back to those second and third missions that the Stoller Center has. Our total budget for Stoller comes in salaries, mainly, and it's about 40% state allocation, 30% is ticket sales, and about 30% in fundraising, and that continues to grow on that side of it. Fundraising is Friends of Stoller, annual giving, private gifts, and corporate sponsorships. As I said, the state allocations is mostly in salaries for my staff, and it covers most of that. Everything else we do at Stoller Center, from advertising to hiring student labor to putting on all of our shows, all comes from monies we bring in through box office, some rentals. There's not a lot there, but we have, as you say, with 325 events, it's very hard to find room for the rentals. And of course, fundraising, which we're doing more and more on. Great fundraising team, and we're continuing to raise more money. It's a tough time. I mean, obviously the arts are very important to me and to a lot of people, but there's a lot of other very important things right here at Stony Brook alone. So we're in a very friendly competition with a lot of our colleagues here. In your packages, you'll see on the left side is our film festival brochure. I think it's the last year, maybe the last 2 years in there. There's also a nice article from IndieWire magazine. It's just one of the dozen we get each year. IndieWire online is probably the most important independent film online experience for independent filmmakers. If you're an independent filmmaker and you want to find out what's going on in the independent film world, you read IndieWire, and we're constantly being covered by them. We continue to grow. We continue to make a name for ourselves. We're one of the most important medium-level film festivals in the country. You know, Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, maybe it's a little further away, but certainly for what we do and what we're at Stony Brook, we're doing an amazing job, and we continue to grow. we're probably the only University Arts Center that runs a year-round Arts Center series and runs the film festival with the same team that turns their hats around. And our production manager becomes hospitality manager. Our house manager becomes a projectionist. So it's very cost effective to do this film festival because my team, along with students, are putting this on. So our our $300,000 film budget can put on the same amount of events that Hamptons would put on for $2 or $3 million. So it's very cost effective and actually pays for itself with corporate support and ticket sales. Obviously, inside the brochure, you've got a little mouse pad and pen with our new sponsor. The arena has it also, Island Federal Credit Union. We hope for more than at least the 10 years that they've signed on for. And that will also give us more monies to help bring in more actors, more filmmakers, advertise more, and really fill up the theaters even more than we've done so far. This year's festival, I'm very excited about. We're about 99.9% confirmed. We were confirmed by Friday. Got a phone call from one of my distributors saying they're going to open the film later on, so we may not be able to have it. So I've got my backup plan working. So hopefully by the time this meeting is over, we will have a schedule ready for the film festival for July. This year's festival has some great American films coming, great independent American films, narratives and documentaries. Countries being represented this year, 40 films, will include Canada, the Netherlands, Germany, Israel, Egypt, Algeria, France, Iran, Greece, finally Dennis, Belgium, Mexico, and Morocco. And will run from July 16th to 25th. A couple of films will have their world premieres at the festival. Many will have U.S. premieres. We expect some folks out here, including Spike Lee, we're hoping for, Katherine Heigl, Katie Holmes, and some other actors and actresses, including some filmmakers for the festival this year. The right side of your brochure, of your package, is a conglomeration of this year-round's programs, including our art gallery exhibits, which continues to grow. And this summer, for the first time, we'll have a summer show with vintage film posters in the gallery. And I've seen some of them. I was in New York last week with our art gallery curator. Some 20-foot film posters on fabric from 100 years ago or 80 years ago. They're amazing, amazing posters. So that'll fill the gallery, and we'll have an exhibit running concurrently with the internet with this Stony Brook Film Festival this summer. We're excited about that. We think the art gallery will continue to grow. Inside the package also are some other mementos. We have some fundraising pieces. We have our outreach and education pieces in there. We have the 2015-16 season brochure. You're welcome, my friend Fred, for Buckwheat Zydeco. Only asked me for 10 years. I know he's not getting any younger, but he is coming next year. Please, he's coming next year. We're very excited. In the 2 weeks the brochure has been out, we have sold almost 60% of our tickets already for the season. So if you've not got your tickets yet, don't wait. They're going really, really well. Always got to sell, got to do that. This is the first full season we actually have a brand new ticketing software program. I'm very excited about it. It's fully accessible. You can pick your own seats. It's fully PCI compliant. You're welcome, Lyle. There's a lot of thank yous here. The shows like the Film Festival passes continue to be reasonably priced. It's very important for us. We really want to make sure everyone can attend these programs. We're a public university. We keep our film prices down. We keep our season prices down. It also helps us raise money by telling people you can see these programs here for a lot less than you can see in New York City or even anywhere else across the country. So all of that's very, very helpful with the money we're raising, especially for fundraising. Last year, almost 80% of our season shows were sold out. This year, I'm looking for 100%. Always have to be out there challenging, trying to make sure we can do it. And I believe we'll get there this year. I know I have a short period of time, so I really want to talk in the last few minutes about the single biggest thing I think that's important and helped us grow, because we're doing great programs, we're doing great events, films, live shows, but we've got to make sure there's an audience for the future. We have to make sure that these programs are accessible to all the children out there around the country, certainly in Suffolk County, starting there. So we have outreach and education. I call it internal outreach and education and external outreach and education. And we've been able to raise a great deal of private and corporate support by using that. Years ago it was very important to have your name as a corporate sponsor on a golf outing or to have your name on a building. That's starting to come back. But in the last 5 years, the real thing that's been important to corporations is to make sure they're giving back to the community. And a lot of the money we've raised in the last few years has come from us saying we are giving back to the community, not just with the programs we're putting on. So, to start internally, you'll see a card on the right side, which is really exciting. We started this 5 years ago. It's called First on Us. And what it is every incoming student to Stony Brook, whether you're a freshman or a transfer, get a free show completely on us. You can pick a live show, a movie, a Met Opera broadcast, everything but our gala, but we hold back 100 seats at half price. I mean, Natalie Cole's a little expensive, but we'll get, you want to see Natalie Cole, we'll get you in to see it. I believe we've looked around. We don't know if there's another university, certainly regionally, that does something like this. You just take this voucher, you rip it off, you show your ID, you pick anything you want to come see at Stoller, and that show's completely on us. We started that 5 years ago. We had about 5% of our freshman class that took advantage of it. In our 5th year, we had just about 20%. So nice growth. It's not enough. I'm offering 4,000 students a free ticket, and we're getting 1,000. We're working with the individual colleges to grow that, and I promise you that number will grow as we continue to get the word out to our students that this is something they need to come and see. A lot of these students didn't grow up with the arts. And I'm not talking about, their sister's recital, at a local dance school. And it's important for us to make sure that these students are taking advantage of the cultural programs we're offering. In addition to the First on Us, we also do a free show, usually every year or two for our students. This year we did the production of Momix. I don't know if everyone's seen that production before. It's phenomenal. It's dance, theater, music. We did 2 shows. One show we put on our season. The second show was completely free to our Stony Brook students. We shook the trees, we went around to dorms, and over 800 Stony Brook students got to see this amazing dance theater production. You can't even explain it. If you haven't seen Momix, go online and watch a video of them. The students cheered, screamed about it, and said how amazing. They walked down, they were hugging us and saying, I don't know what we just saw, but it was really phenomenal. So it was a great cultural program. And it was great to get them in for it, and it's the kind of thing we'll do more and more of to get the students out to come see it. Additionally, we do free movies for our students throughout the year. We're growing that, going to be adding more of those for the productions. We do a lot of donating of tickets to our Stony Brook students. Our Stony Brook students, in addition to their free first show, get half-price tickets for any show after that. And the nights of performances, when there's tickets available, they get $7 tickets. And they can use both of those for up to 2 tickets. We want them to encourage, bring a friend, or even, we want them to bring their friends from Stony Brook, but we found over the years, if a boyfriend is at Suffolk Community College or somewhere else, just don't buy those tickets and give them to mom and dad at that price, because we need to make the money. And you know what? If you think that much about mom and dad, go ahead and do it. Yeah. We ask for the ID and then we go like this when you come in. It's okay. If my kid did that for me, I'd be very happy to do that. But we really want to make sure our students have accessibility. And the real thing is, we always tell our students, come the night of. Because we always get corporate sponsored tickets back. We always get tickets that return back. Like in every theater around the country, the best seats in the theater are the first ones sold and the last ones sold. So we tell our students, I'll tell you also, it's a good treat, but I don't want you taking tickets away from our students. You come the last minute, you can get some tickets. And if a student wants to see a show, we have never turned someone down. If Natalie Cole is your favorite singer, or Paul Reiser is your favorite comedian, or the Cirque shows, Cirque du Soleil type show is something you want to see, we will get a student in. You can also usher and see the show for free that way too. Students are our #1 priority, and we have to get them in. It's not just important, it's also job security for me, because if everyone goes and gets out of here, I'll have no job after this if I don't keep people young coming to the theater. Additionally, we also donate about 1,000 tickets a year to various on-campus organizations and clubs, including EEO, Affirmative Action, the Dance Club, Africana Studies, Stony Brook Children's Hospital, and we always provide free tickets to our music and theater majors, to our music concerts and our theater plays. That's a given. Whenever we put on a concert or a play, those students get to go free for those events. We also, as I mentioned, open up Stoller free of charge to student activities on various occasions throughout the year, so they can present lectures, concerts, special events, although I imagine the bigger shows will start ending up in the arena, because that's where they'll do their big concerts. Externally, I'm almost done. Externally, you can get a little taste of what Stoller did this year with that. I think we have the sheet on your right side. Just a little taste of what we did, some of the highlights of some of our outreach activities that extend outside of Stony Brook. It's been put together by our outreach director, a position that we expanded through an anonymous donor, which is in addition to the Barbara N. Ween Foundation for Arts and Education. So we have two endowments for arts and education. That's how important it is to us and to the community. This year we brought over 30 programs to over 20 various schools and community centers in music, theater and dance, and fine art across Suffolk County. Many of the schools were underrepresented schools, such as Brentwood, Bellport, William Floyd School District, but also included local districts such as Three Villages, Port Jefferson, and Comstock. These programs included professional artists doing small performances, workshops, and master classes. And many of these programs had our music students, theater students, and art students being paid to go out and provide these programs to our local schools and community centers. We also introduced this year, also through a private grant to Staller, an introduction to instruments where our students have gone to libraries to teach preschoolers. And we hope to expand that to our daycare center, to other daycare centers across Suffolk County. On bringing the community to Staller, we've expanded our orchestra to the orchestra program, where we invite high school orchestra members to come to our orchestra concerts, listen to the concerts, and then meet and mingle with our great graduate students, the former Yo-Yo, or the next Yo-Yo Ma's and Itzhak Perlman's. We have an amazing graduate music program, as most of you know, and these students go wild getting to meet these students after the show. These students, of course, you know, especially many of them in the underrepresented schools, have no way of getting a lot of the culture in their schools. Classes have been cut in art, music, and dance, theater. Sometimes they have to give up their lunch break, as many of you know, to get these classes. So we're providing a way to get these children and their schools and their families to programs. We provided over 25 buses to various schools this year and various families to bring them in for these programs. And a lot of them, these are the first things they've seen and the only things they've gotten to see. We will continue to expand that. Again, reaching out to underrepresented communities as well as other communities and schools across Long Island. It's very, very important to us to do this. This year alone, we donated over 3,000 tickets to these various schools. And as I said, almost more like 30 buses we did to bring them in here. We're leading the way. The one thing that we can, bless you, the one thing we do, a lot of art centers, Tiller Center, other art centers provide these programs at a cost. What we offer to these schools and these families and these community centers is everything free of charge. We pay for the buses, we pay for the tickets, we bring them here, we even give them some cookies and juice sometimes during the show or before the show. It is absolutely free, and again, we've looked around, I don't like to look too hard because I like thinking we're the only one, but we're really leading the way in this, that we are providing these programs and we're not charging anyone for it, and that's what we're raising the money for. It's going right back to our community. So you've already got, we always talk about outreach, but as I said, it's very important we start in reach. Our students, faculty, staff, we've got to get more of those into our programs, especially our students, and certainly the community, getting those kids in who don't have the access to the arts. I'm very excited about the future. We're in an ever-changing world with social media rules. People don't leave their homes for entertainment very much anymore. Movies are downloaded on YouTube. Many concerts and plays are now broadcast and rebroadcast. You can watch everything you want on your own phones today. But nothing can replace a live experience or even a communal gathering at a Met Opera or film program. Or going to a film festival and saying, I wonder what that director meant. Hey, what did you mean by that film? By asking he or she after the film, after seeing it. I remember years ago, it was 1988. We brought a phenomenal Russian clown troupe to our theater. I don't know if anyone remembers. It was Theater Litsadai from Moscow, actually from Leningrad at that time. The Russian government had flown me to Moscow and Leningrad on Aeroflot Airlines. Don't recommend it, although maybe in 30 years it's improved. Boy, times have changed, right? The government flew me to see it. So this amazing company, it wasn't a clown troupe, it was a mime theater. Actually, I think it's your last picture on this brochure. You see on the problem, that's these guys right here. So it's 1988. I see this amazing company in this theater, and so I have to bring it to America. So of course, with corporate support, which they no longer have in foreign countries, they've followed our stature of government support, saying go out and raise the money. Brought them to America. They played here in the summer in our International Theater Festival, which we had back in those days, and they played 5 sold-out shows in our main theater. And on the 5th night, I remember they kicked these beach balls into the theater and raised an American flag, and families rose to their feet and cheered for 10 minutes. And remember, this is 1988. We're in a Cold War with Russia. And I was in the back of the theater, and I was like crying like a baby. I mean, to me, it was one of those nights that said, this is why we do it. And when I go to these conferences, I go less and less to them because everyone's talking about, the dying of the arts and the graying of the audience and what are we going to do. I can't stand talking about it. I think back on the days of Theater Litsadai, and I think back on the days of the hundreds of shows we've had over the years where we've turned on the people to these arts programs, our students coming out from Omics. And it's the kind of thing we've got to find a way to be diverse, be creative, be challenging, be entertaining with our programs, make people want to get off their couch, make the students want to come here rather than go to a restaurant or bar or to a party. They can do those also. I'm not sure about the bar unless they're overage, but come to us and enjoy the programs. If we don't, we're going to be in a society that doesn't have the arts. And to me and my team at Stoller Center, that's #1 priority, and we will make sure, I can promise you, as long as I'm still here for the next 32 years, I'm not sure I got 32, but we'll see. I'll continue to do that. And my staff is phenomenal, and we're committed to it. Thank you for indulging. Any questions? No.
Yeah, it was nice to see how shy you are.
Yeah. You know, if we don't have the passion, you know, it's very hard to say, you know, come see a show. You know, you got to have it to get people.
I love the passion. It's great. And you know, one of the things I get a chance to participate in this program every October is called Arts Alive, and it's really try to promote the arts on Long Island. And not everybody realizes it that you know the arts is a big economic driver in our region in terms of all the people that employees from the East End to the Queens border. And but in addition to the economic impact, it goes to the whole fabric of our region. And we sell our workforce, we sell our research institutions, we sell our beautiful environment, parks and golf courses, but our arts make up such a you know, important component of that. And I learned so much from your presentation today that I wasn't aware of, because similarly, I think with Stony Brook, you think of Stony Brook when you think of the great research, you think of Jim Simons, and you think of the math department, and when you think of the incredible health science campus. And now we're beginning to what we did with Jamil earlier, recognizing the great sports. But I'm not sure we promote the arts enough, because it really is a key component of this fabric we call Stony Brook University community. And so I think it's great what you shared, and I agreed with everything you said. I was excited to hear it.
Oh, I'd like to talk about the economic impact. Try getting a reservation at a restaurant the night we have a show on a Saturday night, you know. And it's funny because one night we had a gala, and I was sitting there, and it was about 10 to 8, and it was very slow service in one of the restaurants, I won't name it. And everyone sitting around was saying, "Thank God you're here, Alan, because the show won't start." I said, "I'm not performing tonight. Don't expect it." And you talk about the passion. Years and years ago, I found a fortune cookie that said, "Nothing in life is accomplished without passion." And I blew it up and put it over the fax machine, and for years everyone saw it. Now, of course, no one's ever gone into the fax machine room to see it, because we don't even know what a fax machine is. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Alan, I learned more than Kevin because I knew less about the program.
Thanks, Jim.
But I just wondered, have you done any work with the many downtown performing arts centers that are coming up on Long Island now? Because they're really economic drivers. I sat with Patty Lapone and Pat Trog, and the town was just alive in every restaurant.
Yeah, you know, we're a strange place, you know, because what is our town? You know, we've got, you know, we work with Port Jefferson, we work with Stony Brook Village. Absolutely, we work with the Port Jeff Creative Arts Council. We put their slides up before our films. We do. It's just we're a little more scattered than being the Paramount Theater sitting in Huntington.
Yeah.
But you know, we're a very good neighbor. You know, we're very supportive of the Cinema Arts Center. When people say to me, "Why don't you do more movies? I love independent film movies." I said, "Well, we have to do live shows too. We're an arts center. You really love independent films? Then go to Cinema Arts Center in between." So. Yeah, we try, and also we do things one night at a time. So people have talked about dinner theater packages. It's not like a Broadway show. We've done some of those, but it's not like a Broadway show that runs for a full week. You've got to get someone who wants to see that show that night and that kind of thing. But more and more we're doing it. But you know, we're also struggling that when you call up another theater, everyone's like, "I'd love to work with you, Alan, but you know, we got to get our own thing going," because everybody is struggling out there. But we're a friend. We're a very good friend. You ask around Long Island, certainly in Suffolk County, we are very supportive, because my feeling is there's no competition. That couch I talked about is our competition. I know I can't get my wife off it. You know, so she, you know, anyone who comes to the theater, you see me, I'm sitting with my financial director, you know, Bobby Ween, because my wife said, you know, I want to sit home and, you know, watch TV and all that. And that's the problem. I think you can get anything you want today on TV, or you can download the movie before it even opens.
Yeah, Sam said one time that athletics are the front porch of the university, the most visible. I think the analogy was a good one, Kevin.
Kevin, did he sound like me in the locker room?
Well, it's very funny because Sean and I have a very good relationship, and we both agree that, and that's sort of rare to have arts, because it's amazing. Even corporate sponsorships, You know, and I won't say the husband or the wife, because sometimes it's the wife that wants to go to the games and the husband who wants to come to the opera. But we have a lot of these kinds of, these are the two sort of windows to this place we bring in between arts and athletics, or for Sean, athletics and arts. These are, you know, I got to be fair to them. It's two ways people see it.
My thing is, have you ever connected with the Hamptons? I mean, with Southampton, since we, part of our campus, the Aram thing? Seems to me that that would be another audience. You remember when Bob Silliman would do those rock and roll shows,
Yeah.
whatever he did. And we don't really have that many theater performances out there that I know of. I think, why not?
Bob Reeves and I are good friends. You know, Christine Vachon, who you saw a picture of with Killer Films, we did a big night. They came out. We celebrated her. We gave her a lifetime a career achievement award. She said she's too young for a lifetime achievement award. So we are working. We're always trying to find ways to bring things back and forth. It's tricky. The summer is a strange time out there. Years ago, there was the Avram Theater in the South Campus was doing concerts. It's not recently. Something to explore.
But isn't that part of your
It absolutely is part of. It's not part of my operation. I got enough. But it is something that we can work more on.
Create an energy.
I gotta tell you, I've been coming to the Stoller Center for, I don't know, 15 years. There is nobody that promotes this campus better than this guy. He has been, I run into him at the beach, and he's talking about what's coming up at the Stoller Center, and my wife and I have enjoyed shows there. My baby, who's now 8, has enjoyed shows there, so I encourage everybody to take advantage of everything he's doing over there. It is a world-class institution. World-class. I mean, like anything else we have on this campus, it's world-class. And it's world-class that we could all understand and enjoy. You don't have to drag your butt into Manhattan to see some of this stuff. He does it as well, if not better. I think it's better because I can walk here. I don't have to get on a train. So I highly encourage it. I've known Alan for years, and I think the work he does here is just top notch.
Thank you, Chris.
Leave on that high note, Alan.
I love it. And keep talking to your wife. I love the county sponsorship. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Chris.
We're in.
Be careful.
Hey, I can't help.
We're going to speed things up. We got 2 more things we got to get to on the agenda. Next up is cognition in the courtroom with Dr. Nancy Franklin from the Department of Psychology. Nancy?
Yeah. So just to introduce very quickly, Nancy is one of our very outstanding professors in the Department of Psychology, and she's one of the world's experts, essentially, on memory representation, and does some very interesting things. And one of the things we wanted to do was, hopefully part of the benefits of being a member of this council is to get exposed to a number of the interesting things that are happening in the university. And our scholarly output is a critical component of it. So I asked Nancy, and we asked Nancy to come in and just tell you a little bit about what I think is a very interesting topic.
Thank you. So you may have been hearing about exonerations over the past several years. It turns out that these are very predictable sorts of errors where people are falsely convicted. And as it also turns out, members of my field, cognitive psychology and social psychology, have been doing a lot of research to understand why these things are so predictable and pervasive. And so I'm going to actually let some of the recent news stories lead the way here. This is from 3 weeks ago in Brooklyn. Rashawn Hargrave, who was convicted for a 1991 murder and has been spending all of that time in prison, was just released, and the main evidence against him, in fact the only evidence against him, was a false eyewitness identification. This is from 2 weeks ago. This is a press release from the FBI acknowledging that some of its beloved science that so many of us had believed in the courtroom, and this is microscopic hair analysis, had been wrong more than 90% of the time when analysts testified in court or provided reports. Not a surprise to people in my field, but it's shocking and horrifying. From last week, Chicago City Council voted to award reparations to people who've been tortured and had false confessions drawn out of them. Hundreds of people, some of whom are no longer around to get the reparations. So here's what we have. This is from the Innocence Project. The DNA-based exonerations, the first several hundred. It turns out that for people who were convicted, who we now know are innocent, in about 3/4 of the cases, faulty eyewitness evidence. Faulty identifications had contributed to the wrongful conviction. About half of the time, forensic analyst reports, the CSI information, right, the stuff that we all believe in, 50% of the time they had contributed to false convictions. About a quarter of the time, false confessions to murders and rapes and robberies. Why would anybody do that? Who would do that? And it turns out you might. It's actually not hard to produce. And I'll tell you more about all of these first three things. It turns out this doesn't go onto the screen, so I'm circling the first three bars. Those are all very easily understood from people in my field. So this is actually more of science as a superpower, right? Something that is not just of great intellectual interest, but that can contribute to making the world a much better place and contribute to protecting people. So I'm going to walk you through some of these, and you may notice these add up to more than 100, and that's because in many of these cases you have multiple factors contributing to a case, and I'll explain why that is. So let's get started. Let's start with your loved one is murdered and you're there, and here are the two people who did it, and they were nice enough to stand there for you as long as you need to study their faces, giving you full view and under good lighting, and you're all very calm and you can study the faces, and I'll give you lots of time. So you all ready for the ID test? So also very happily, let's say the detectives arrive within 2 seconds to give you the ID test. And you're not going to look through a full mug book, you'll just get these 10. So is either or both of the people that you saw in this set? Or neither?
Say one.
You say one? Who? Right? So someone's life depends on this when you say, and how in the world are you doing this, right? If your mother was in this lineup, you wouldn't be studying and narrowing down like you're doing. You're doing something other than memory recognition.
She'd be the only woman, though.
Actually, some lineups have been conducted not far from that, where you have a perpetrator who was described as a particular race, let's say, and they're the only guy of that race in the lineup, and people have been convicted based on that. So I'm making it much easier for you. Is either of these guys or both of them in the lineup? And again, this is the best of circumstances, right? This is never what happens in a criminal situation. And it's hard. Will you acknowledge that?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about what happens in real world situations. So you don't get all the time you need to study a face, and you don't necessarily get good lighting. You don't get upright full view. You may be under tremendous stress, and it turns out that stress does not sear a face into memory. It actually makes it harder to encode. And then you're more likely later on, not just to not recognize the right guy, but in so many of these factors, what you find is that false identifications go up because people have a strong bias to make an identification. You look for the guy who looks most like the guy, and there's always someone like that. Weapon focus, if there's, if a guy's holding a gun, let's say, you should and you do focus on the dangerous thing, and that's less time to encode a face, but it nevertheless leads to higher rates of false identification. Cross-race ID, even if you live in a highly integrated society and you get lots of incidental exposure to other races, again, lower rates of correct ID, higher rates of false ID. Your confidence tends to go up with time because you're rehearsing it over and over, you're filling in details, you're sort of organizing your memory so that it makes great sense, it's getting more vivid for you, all of that increases confidence. And by the way, you're moving forward with the district attorney who's giving you lots of feedback, and it's clear to you that they believe this is the right guy, all of that increases confidence, so that in 57% of the DNA exoneration cases, you see that people went from equivocal confidence when they originally made an identification to absolute confidence sometimes years later when they're making the ID in court. And by the way, as time is going, you're forgetting, right? That's what happens to actual memory of the original event. You're filling in information, not just things that you sort of infer later on, but co-witnesses may say something that infiltrates your memory. A detective who asks questions like, how how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? It's a classic experiment. Leads people to remember high rate of speed and glass because of the word smashed. You got to phrase your question somehow, and you can actually distort memory by the way you ask a question, trying to be as faithful as you can as a detective to not alter evidence. But the fact is, we know not to alter evidence. We know to protect fingerprint and blood evidence. But with memory, you can't help but having somebody's remembrance of an event change with time. The ID procedure itself, so many ways that it can go wrong, including a witness being led or a witness being influenced after they make an identification by simply being told, yes, you identified our suspect. The person is going to become a witness in court later on. Having been told that increases their confidence and changes their memory of the original event. So they now have a memory of a closer distance and better view. This is all sort of what happens, even when nobody means to change memory. As you prepare for your trial and you're shown a picture of the defendant over and over, or if you undergo multiple identification procedures, presumably to make sure that you keep being reliably identifying the same guy, with each exposure, that face becomes more solidified for you, and you become more likely to identify them right or wrong. I could go on all day about identification, but I have 3 topics I want to tell you about. Let's go to that CSI, gold standard evidence. What I want to show you is that forensic analysts are human. And much of the time, actually, they're not trained in sciences. They're trained in some other field, like history or English, and they come in to conduct analyses where they're comparing fingerprints, let's say, to each other, or hairs under a microscope. And their job is to determine whether there's a match. They come with the same biases that actually all of us have, even those of us trained in the sciences. And I'm going to give you a very quick demonstration of this. So 2, 4, what's next? 6, what's next? 8. Okay, so what's the rule that's generating this series? Increase by 2. Okay, and so that's what people tend to say. And it could be, for you to actually test the rule that you were thinking of, you should have said 3 to hear if I tell you yes or no that that's the next in a series. Or you should say hyena, or you should, show me a emoticon of a happy face or something. What people tend to do is have their working hypothesis and then assume it's true and then look only for confirming evidence. And that's not the way you conduct a science. So people trained, for example, in medicine know to do that. People trained in English, not so much, or people who are practicing medicine or practicing in a field, even if they have been trained, may fall prey to a very strong human bias. So what that leads to is some of these statistics that, if anything, we should be able to trust serology reports, right? Blood analysis, saliva, semen. It's that, if anything, is the gold standard. And it turns out in 38% of the exoneration cases where we have serology testimony, it's flawed. And right on down this list. It's terrifying, and I want to tell you more about what we've learned about how this happens. So I had fingerprint analysis here. Looks like a small contributing factor, but let's just open that up a little bit. Here's how fingerprint analysis works. So you have, first, the fact that latent fingerprints are not the same. When you have 2 fingerprints from the same thumb at 2 different times, it's not going to be a perfect match. You have smudging and partial prints. The distortion that happens with different pressure leads to different patterns, not perfect matches. And this becomes a perceptual task, much like you had with the faces that you're trying to compare to each other, right? And what the analysts are presented with is the result of a computer algorithm where a large database of fingerprints gets compared to the one that was taken from the scene. And then the computer system, through an algorithm, takes the top 10 orders them in the order that it has determined is the likeliest match, and then the analysts look at those comparisons and make their own determination. As it turns out, the analysts tend to go disproportionately for whatever's at the top of the list. It's a confirmation bias. This is what the computer thinks. I'm going to go ahead and look and see if I have only evidence that demonstrates that this is the right match. And they tend to do that. They tend to make that match. And much of the time it's wrong, because this is a perceptual task that makes it hard for a human and even harder for a computer. We also have, if you take a match that an analyst had given, and then later on, without telling them it was one that they had made a match to, you give it to them again, 10% of the time they'll reverse themselves. If you tell them, by the way, here's a pair that was taken from an exoneration case that you weren't involved in, they had originally made the match, but if you tell them this when you give them the pair again, 80% of the time they will reverse themselves. Very easily suggestible. They're like you and me, they're human. This is not as a reliable of a set of techniques as the larger community seems to believe. In addition to that, we're all very easily swayed by external information that may suggest that there is or is not a match. So, for example, if an analyst is given an extremely blurred picture of a license plate, so highly pixelated from so far away there's no way to read it, they are likely to say, I can't tell what this is. But if you say, we believe this comes from the perpetrator's vehicle and that license plate number is BMY2534, they are likely then to look at it, or they're at risk of now seeing that pattern. The right answer is to have analysts do their analyses in complete isolation, where they're not subject to these suggestive external forces, and they're not subjected to coercive forces either. Some of those coercive forces are a detective saying, try again, if they come back inconclusive, or if they find a match to somebody who's other than the detective suspect. The reward and penalty contingencies favor finding some match, having some closure to a case. Their own internal biases are to find closure to a case. It's very dissatisfying to spend your day at the office and not find a perpetrator. And these people tend to work for the police force, so the coercive and contingency setups favor finding a match when really the appropriate scientific answer is inconclusive. All right, so let me say more about coercion, actually.
Nancy, hold on one second.
Yeah.
Peter, how much time are you going to need? We have to wrap up at 11 o'clock. I need to manage.
Depends how many questions I get.
You need 5 minutes?
Yeah.
You and Patty are together? Or Maddie?
Yeah. I blame you.
You and Maddie. All right.
I'm suing you for 5 minutes.
It's always my fault. It's okay.
All right. So, do your best in 5.
In 5. Oh, okay. So risk factors. So, believe me, we're all at risk for false confessions. And in fact, sometimes it's the rational thing to do when it looks like the evidence against you is overwhelming, and either you cooperate and get a reduced sentence, or you go for it with the very strong belief that you're going to be convicted if you ask for a trial. In addition to all of us being at risk for this, people with lower coping skills, people who are most vulnerable, actually have the highest risk of false confession. So that includes youth. You may remember the Central Park Five, all of whom falsely confessed to having attacked the Central Park jogger. So their lawsuit was resolved last year. It's still a recent case. Mental illness, people who don't have sufficient social skills to withstand the pressures of interrogation, who have emotional problems. Last week, actually Friday, Pedro Hernandez jury came back undecided. He's the guy who was accused of murdering Etan Pates, the 6-year-old in New York. Pedro Hernandez, there's evidence that he has schizophrenia or schizotypal personality disorder that would put him at risk potentially for a false confession. Addiction, imagine just being a cigarette addict and being isolated and not allowed to smoke while you're being subjected to the pressures of interrogation. People want to get out of there, and they underweight long-term consequences and overweight short-term consequences. People are at very high risk for making false confessions under these sorts of circumstances, particularly when they're at high risk. And amazingly, people who believe in the justice system, who think, this is all a terrible mistake, I don't know how I failed the polygraph, I don't know how there's witnesses that put me at the scene, but this will all get worked out because I believe in the justice system, actually are at greater risk of, what's the harm? Confess, get out of there now, it'll all get fixed later. All of these people tend to waive their Miranda rights, so they really are stuck in the confession situation or the interrogation situation. There are a lot of techniques that converge to make this happen, and they're useful techniques for getting true criminals to confess. It's hard to get someone who's actually guilty to confess. So these are in place. The problem is that they also lead to false confessions. So isolating people from their source of social support, cutting them off and not allowing them to make their case for innocence, maximizing the potential penalties of going to court and being found guilty, you'll get 50 years, minimizing their role, and you can't promise leniency, but you can sure imply it. And people who are of lower intellectual abilities will read that as a promise of leniency. You can bluff in the interrogation situation. You can say, we have your fingerprints, we have a videotape of you. That all is actually allowed. And again, a rational person may listen to that, and if they believe it, weigh the possible consequences and decide to confess. And really terrifyingly, during the course of the interrogation, often the police will refer to details of the case in the questions that they're asking. And later on, with a lot of practice and rehearsal and lots of protests of innocence at the beginning and those sort of fading away, and then inculpating statements, and then finally the confession in front of the camera, you wind up with details of the case incorporated into a very fluent, articulate, detailed confession that is also given by somebody who's showing flat affect. They're exhausted, they're worn down, and they look like they have no remorse when you look at the video. I've seen some of these false confessions. They are so compelling, and this is why. I mentioned before that there's multiple factors contributing to many of these cases, and here's some of the data on this. 65% of the cases that involve false confessions and other forms of wrongful evidence actually happened with the confession first. So we have confirmation bias. We have a witness being told the guy confessed, is this him? Or an analyst being told our suspect has provided a confession, all we need is for you to analyze the fingerprints. We have all this cross-contagion that you don't see, hopefully, in other forms of evidence being used against people. But you see it very much here, and it makes for, what seems like an open and shut case when you have a defendant and you're sitting on the jury. Okay, so almost there. I think this is the last slide. So, what can people in my field do? And turns out it's a lot. We have been educating judges, which is fantastic because they make decisions about the evidence and the experts who are allowed in court. We've been making sure that the public knows about this because they make the decisions ultimately about people. We've been helping police learn how to not taint their witnesses and not coerce their suspects as best we can. Not all of the jurisdictions have adopted it, but we're making progress. So we have witness interview techniques. We get confidence ratings as soon as they make their identifications rather than much later in court. Videotaping the entire interaction of police and suspects is potentially one of the most important things that we can do, so we can see the evolution of someone's story contradicting itself over time and becoming more consistent with the police story. Very important for protecting people. And making sure that analysts are well trained in scientific techniques, because these techniques are only as good as the hands that they're in. And doing what we can to make sure that the contingencies change so that they're more inclined to find inconclusive and demand additional evidence before they make a determination in those cases that they should. We have been contributing, including me, to many landmark Court of Appeals cases where these sorts of findings by the scientific community are making their way into police practices and into juror instructions. And that includes actually several in New York, one of which is People versus Abney, where I was the expert. And many of us are actually assisting in pro bono cases where, these mistakes are going to get made. We're talking about human cognition, we're talking about human social pressures. These things will continue to happen, but we're putting into place more and more opportunities to review cases, and I and many of my colleagues have been involved in helping with that. So again, we have, I guess, science as a means of protecting the larger community in ways that we hadn't originally expected, and that's really been a pleasure to be part of.
I like that. Nancy, are you often an expert witness?
Yes, and I'm often helping in pro bono cases, including Rashawn Hargrave. That was the first slide I put up, the guy who was just released from a 1991 murder. Yeah, so he has a co-defendant, and I'm helping with that case.
And are any of the trainings that you do, are any of those mandatory, or are these just judges and police who are voluntarily seeking your assistance? Is that any of the training that they invite you to, is that mandatory on their part?
None.
So this is really, I think it's spectacular stuff, and it's really a paradigm shift. I think all of us were brought up from a young age of believing eyewitness was the key thing. And if someone said, "Oh, I saw this person do this," you didn't really need much else besides eyewitness testimony. And then after CSI, we can now put our faith in science, right? That the DNA in the hairs and and this tiny fabric in the back of my trunk proves conclusively that I happen to do this. So it's really nice to see you introducing maybe a little more rationality and science behind both how memory works, and now also taking on to some degree the inaccuracies that are potentially there in forensic science and pointing out how individual biases lead to them. So it's really important. Nobody wants to see somebody innocent. Our whole justice system is based on a premise that you are innocent until proven guilty. We do not want to see innocent people convicted in our system. And so I think to help us overturn those cases where they exist, I think is extraordinarily important. It allows us to have more confidence in the system that's so valid. So
Not there yet.
Yeah,
Don't have confidence
I
yet.
know. But I think this is what we're
strive for.
Yeah. It's nice to be able to, knowing there's going to be mistakes, it's nice to be able to reduce them. It's also nice to be able to have sort of a quality assurance after the fact in place. I love that. So let me just acknowledge the Brooklyn DA, who has set up a task force to go back and review old cases. He's, as far as I know, one of less than 20 in the country at this point. Let's hope that grows.
Nancy, thank you again.
Thank you, Nancy. Peter, because I always take pride in ending our meetings on time, I know you got
2 minutes.
Let me down. You got 3, but go for it.
Okay, you had in your packet the revisions to the Student Conduct Code. Changes, the emphasis was on compliance and clarity. With the standalone, with the extraction of standalone sexual misconduct, the rules will need renumbering, the balance of the rules, but are otherwise not going to be changed. I'd like the council's approval.
And these were all circulated by Susan a couple of weeks ago, and we've all had a chance to review them. Did anybody have any comments or revisions or additions? Taking motion by Linda, seconded by Jim. Any comments, revisions, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved, Peter. You did it in one, so I'm very impressed.
All right.
And Maddie doesn't need to share anything with us? No? That was all
did a
part of it?
fabulous job.
Good? All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to raise? Hearing none, we got graduation next Friday. The schedule for the fall semester, Susan will be sending out, over the summer. And want to thank all of our presentations. Again, whether it was the video we saw, whether it was seeing Jamil, whether it was hearing about the Stoller Center, the other incredible programs that we just heard from Nancy, so many different things that happen on this campus impact not just the lives of Long Islanders, but now could impact the lives of people all around the country, and of course with our campuses in Korea and our programs in Madagascar, all around the world. And it really is exciting to be a part of it. And Sam, you built an incredible team, and I've told you guys before, we appreciate when you guys all show up here in case we have any questions. And thank you for the show of respect you have for this council, and want to wish everybody a great summer, and we'll see you soon. All right, motion to adjourn.